The sound of laughter hit me first. Not the warm kind, the cruel, echoing kind that fills a boardroom when the wolves think they've finally torn you apart. "I think it's best if you step down, Claire," my brother Jason said, his voice calm, smug, dripping with false sympathy. "Dad's company needs real leadership now." The papers were already in front of me. Termination forms, board signatures, even my assistant's handwriting on the back page. They had planned this weeks in advance. I looked at my father's old logo embossed in gold on the letterhead. Carter Industries. The name I'd rebuilt from ashes after Dad's death. And now, my own blood was taking it away. Jason leaned back, crossing his arms. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Harder? He had no idea what hard meant. I remember gripping the edge of the table so tightly my knuckles went white. My voice didn't break, not once. "If you think you can run this without me, you're already drowning." They laughed again. I walked out with nothing but my bag and the $100 bill Dad had given me when I first took over. "Always keep this," he'd said, "as a reminder that you can rebuild from anything." That bill was all I had left. My name is Claire Carter. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever been treated like a stranger in your own family? Because that's exactly what they made me that day. A ghost in the empire I built. But ghosts don't stay quiet forever. The world outside the Carter Tower looked different when you no longer owned it. I stood on the sidewalk watching the glass reflect the sunset, realizing I had just been erased. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I promised myself one thing instead: I'll make them remember me. I rented a one-bedroom apartment on the east side. Leaky ceiling, peeling paint, neighbors who yelled through the walls. The kind of place Jason would never step foot in. Every night, I sat under a flickering bulb sketching business ideas on pizza boxes. By month's end, I'd maxed out my last credit card to register a new company, Phoenix Dynamics. It wasn't much, just me, my laptop, and fire in my veins. Jason thought he had taken my legacy. But he'd only freed me from his shadow. One investor turned me down after another. Until a woman named Ava Monroe, a venture capitalist with a gut for underdogs, saw something in my plan. "This idea has teeth," she said. "But do you?" I smiled. "I bite." She wired the first $50,000 seed the next morning. For 6 months, I slept 4 hours a night, coded till sunrise, pitched during the day. Phoenix Dynamics started small, sustainable AI logistics software. But every client I signed made one thing clear: I was back. And then one night my phone buzzed with a text from Jason. "Heard you're still trying. Cute." I looked at the message, smirked, and replied, "Trying? Building." He didn't respond. He didn't have to. Because soon, my name would be in every headline he thought he owned. 18 months later, Forbes ran a headline. Claire Carter's Phoenix Dynamics secures $10 million Series A. Jason called. I let it ring. My company was booming. Every sleepless night had carved something real. Our software was revolutionizing supply chains, cutting costs by 30%. Even Carter Industries quietly bought a license under a shell name. The irony was delicious. I hired engineers who had been fired when Jason took over. They came hungry, loyal. People who believed in something bigger than boardrooms and bloodlines. When we hit $25 million in valuation, I threw a launch party. Not to celebrate, to signal war. I invited every industry leader. Jason wasn't on the list. But he showed up anyway. Wearing Dad's old watch, the same one he swore he'd never touch. "Impressive, Claire," he said, swirling his drink. "But you know how this ends. I've got scale. You've got stories." I leaned in. "Stories build empires. You should know I built yours." For a moment the mask slipped. His jaw tightened. He hated being reminded who carried the Carter legacy when he was still playing golf in business school. That night, as the crowd cheered my name, I caught his reflection in the glass. Small, bitter, fading. And that's when I realized. He wasn't my rival. He was my reminder. The fire that keeps burning even when everything else goes dark. Jason couldn't stand watching me rise. He did what he always did best. Cheated. A month after we hit $50 million in valuation, Carter Industries announced a new product. A near-identical AI system. My system. They'd stolen our design, down to the code. My lawyers called it corporate espionage. I called it personal. I could have sued. Instead, I chose something sharper. I called Ava. We're going to let him launch, I said. And then we'll break him in public. We gathered proof quietly, timestamps, encrypted logs, source signatures. Every line of stolen code had my name embedded in it, invisible but traceable. 2 weeks later, Carter Industries unveiled Nova AI. Jason stood on stage, all smiles, the press eating from his hand. And then live on national TV I walked in. Security froze. Cameras turned. Nice product, Jason, I said into the mic. Shame you didn't build it. A single USB drive. One click. Screens behind him flooded with code, my signature. Every line proof of theft. The room went silent. Jason's face drained of color. And I just walked away. That night, Phoenix Dynamics servers nearly crashed from traffic. Investors poured in. Carter stock tanked 40%. I didn't just reclaim what he stole. I took back my name. Success changes people, but pain changes you more. By year 3, Phoenix Dynamics hit $100 million in revenue. My team grew to 200 people. We opened offices in New York, Austin, and Seattle. But something inside me stayed sharp, unhealed. Because revenge, even when one leaves scars. Jason tried to reach me. Dozens of times. I ignored every call, until one voicemail stopped me cold. Claire, it's about Dad. He'd found something. Something Dad left behind. A sealed envelope in the safe at Carter Tower. Jason wanted to meet, alone. I almost didn't go. But the curiosity clawed at me. When I walked into his office, it was different, emptier, quieter. He looked older, smaller. He slid the envelope across the table. Inside was a letter, dated 2 days before Dad died. To my children, whoever builds, not inherits, will carry my true legacy. Jason's voice cracked. He left the real ownership to you. The room spun. All that fighting. All that hate. For something that was always mine. But I didn't smile. Because revenge may give you power. But forgiveness gives you peace. And I wasn't ready for peace. Jason begged for a partnership. Let's merge. Start over, he said. But starting over meant forgiving him, and I wasn't sure I could. Then came the scandal. Carter Industries had been falsifying profits for years. Jason was facing federal charges. I could have saved him. One call from me and it would all disappear. But when I saw the headlines, Carter CO under investigation, I felt nothing. Maybe that was the real revenge. Ava said, "You won, Claire. Let it go." But I wasn't sure I wanted to. Until one night I found the $100 bill again, tucked inside my old wallet. The ink had faded, but Dad's words still glimmered. Build from anything. That's when I decided. Not to destroy, but to rebuild again. This time without hate. The world outside Carter Tower looked different when you were no longer welcome inside it. I stood on the sidewalk as the revolving glass doors spun behind me, carrying out men in $1,000 suits who didn't even glance my way. Hours ago they'd been my team. Now they were Jason's. I still had Dad's $100 bill in my wallet. That and a phone full of contacts who suddenly wouldn't answer. Betrayal doesn't burn clean. It lingers, it smokes. But if you breathe through it long enough, it becomes oxygen. I used that oxygen to build again. My apartment that first month was a shoebox. One bed, one flickering light, and walls thin enough to hear the neighbors' regrets. I'd sit on the floor with my laptop, coding for 12 hours straight, drinking stale coffee, writing pitches to investors who ghosted me before sunrise. Every rejection hit the same. Your idea is ambitious, Claire, but we're looking for a stronger team. Translation: you're alone and we don't bet on women who've been cut out. So I didn't quit. Because I wasn't rebuilding for Jason anymore. I was rebuilding for me. Then one night a name popped up on my screen, Ava Monroe. She was known in the startup world for betting on broken people who refused to stay down. We met at a diner off Fifth Avenue. She wore black leather and a stare sharp enough to cut marble. Everyone's heard the Carter story, she said, sipping her coffee. Your brother thinks you're done. I smiled. Good. Then he won't see me coming. Ava slid a contract across the table. I'll give you $50,000 in seed money. No promises, no pity. If you make it work, you owe me 10%. If not, you owe me nothing. I looked her dead in the eye. Deal. That night, I built the framework for Phoenix Dynamics. The name wasn't subtle. I didn't want it to be. When you've lost everything, you stop caring about subtlety. You build with fire, not approval. For months, I coded alone, taught myself what I didn't know, and learned how to sell what I did. I slept on my office floor, survived on ramen and rage. Then one morning, I woke up to an email with the subject line: confirmed contract, Logitech shipping. A $300,000 deal. I stared at it, tears I didn't even feel streaking my face. That same day, Jason posted a photo on LinkedIn. Him smiling in my old chair. Caption: the next era of Carter Industries begins. He had no idea. The fire he started was the one that would burn his kingdom down. And I had just struck the match. 18 months later, the world finally learned how dangerous a woman can be when she's got nothing left to lose. The Forbes headline hit like lightning. Claire Carter's Phoenix Dynamics raises $10 million Series A. Jason must have choked on his morning espresso when he saw it. Because 10 minutes later my phone buzzed, his name lighting up my screen for the first time in over a year. I didn't answer. I just watched the call ring out, smiling at the irony. He'd once told me I'd never survive without his guidance. Now he was calling the woman he'd erased from the company minutes before her name took over the industry. Phoenix Dynamics wasn't a startup anymore. It was a revolution. We weren't building another AI software. We were building a smarter backbone for global logistics. One that learned, adapted, predicted, and evolved faster than any human team could. Our first client? A freight company quietly owned by Carter Industries. They had no clue they were buying my tech. I still remember the first board meeting with my new team, 12 people, all ex-Carter employees who'd been discarded after Jason's so-called restructuring. I told them, we're not building a company. We're building a message. They didn't clap. They didn't need to. They understood. By year 2, we hit a valuation of $25 million. Investors lined up. Reporters wanted interviews. Ava wanted a victory speech. Instead, I threw a launch party. Not for the media, for the message. It was held in a glass rooftop bar overlooking the same skyline where Jason once fired me. The guest list? Every industry leader in logistics and tech. And yes, I made sure Jason wasn't invited. But he showed up anyway. Of course he did. He arrived late, all charm and designer arrogance, shaking hands like he still owned the room. When our eyes met, he smirked. Didn't expect to see you here. I tilted my glass. Funny. I could say the same. He circled the crowd, playing the golden boy as usual. Then he leaned in close and whispered, "You've had a cute run, Claire. But you and I both know this ends the same way, with me on top." I didn't flinch. "You said that the last time I walked out your door. How's the view from my shadow?" His smile faltered for just a second. That second was all I needed. When the party lights dimmed and the crowd cheered for Phoenix's next chapter, I caught Jason's reflection in the glass, standing alone, clutching his drink, his expression dark. That was the night I realized something important. He wasn't my competition anymore. He was my past. And my past no longer terrified me, it fueled me. I had built something he could never buy, never fake, never steal. Loyalty. And loyalty was about to bring his empire to its knees. Jason didn't take humiliation well. Men like him rarely do, the kind born with silver spoons and thinner skin. 2 months after the rooftop party, Carter Industries announced their newest innovation. Nova AI, the future of predictive logistics. The moment I saw the demo stream online, my stomach turned cold. Every dashboard, every interface, it was mine. He hadn't even bothered to change the layout colors. At first, I thought I was paranoid. But then one of my lead developers, Marcus, called me into the lab. He pulled up Nova's public API. Buried inside, hidden deep in the source code, was my digital fingerprint. My encryption signature. Jason had stolen Phoenix Dynamics' core algorithm. For a moment I couldn't breathe. All those sleepless nights, the risks, the pain, ripped off and repackaged by the same man who'd already taken everything once. Ava called it corporate espionage. Called it déjà vu. I remember staring out the office window as city lights flickered below. Part of me wanted to sue, to bury him legally. But then another part, the sharper, colder part, whispered, let him launch. Let him hang himself with it. And that's exactly what I did. For 2 weeks my team worked in silence, gathering proof. Every stolen line of code was time-stamped, traceable, my watermark woven into its DNA. Jason thought he'd erased me. He didn't know I'd learned how to write myself into the system. Permanently. Then came launch day. Carter Industries packed an auditorium with investors, cameras, journalists. Jason standing on stage like a king returning from exile. I watched from the back, uninvited. He spoke with that same false confidence, every line rehearsed, every smile weaponized. Today, he said, we redefine innovation. That was my cue. I walked straight down the aisle, heels echoing against the marble. Security froze. Cameras turned. Jason's face twitched, his rehearsed grin cracking. Nice product, I said into the mic beside him. Shame you didn't build it. He tried to speak, I didn't let him. I pulled a small USB drive from my pocket, plugged it into the main display laptop and pressed enter. Behind him, the screen exploded into cascading lines of code, each one tagged. Created by Claire Carter, Phoenix Dynamics. A collective gasp filled the room. Journalists swarmed. Investors stared in horror. Jason's jaw locked. This is theft, I said, my voice steady. And here's your evidence. Then I walked off stage. That night, Carter Industries' stock plummeted 38%. Phoenix Dynamics trended #1 worldwide. By morning, my inbox was full of partnerships, offers, headlines. Jason had stolen my code. But I had stolen back his credibility, the one thing you can never rebuild once it burns. And for the first time in years, I slept soundly. Because this time the betrayal was his, and the power was mine. Success doesn't roar. It hums, low and steady like an engine that never stops. 3 years after I walked out of Carter Tower with $100 and rage in my veins, Phoenix Dynamics was a machine. 200 employees, offices in 3 states, contracts with companies Jason once bragged about courting. Our valuation crossed $100 million before my 31st birthday. Every reporter called it a Cinderella comeback. But they didn't see the blood under the glass slippers. Because success, when built from betrayal, doesn't heal you, it haunts you. I still woke up some nights hearing Jason's voice. Dad's company needs real leadership now. And I'd smile. Because now it had it. But something shifted the day my assistant said, your brother's been calling. Every day. I ignored it until the message changed. Claire, it's about Dad. The voicemail was quiet, broken in a way I'd never heard him sound before. 2 days later, I walked back into the same building where they'd once voted me out. Jason met me in the boardroom. Smaller, thinner, the arrogance dimmed. He didn't say a word. Just slid an old, sealed envelope across the table. It was yellowed, the edges brittle. My name written in Dad's handwriting. Inside was a letter. To my children. This company was built from nothing, but bloodline means nothing without backbone. Whoever rebuilds it from ashes owns it in truth. Underneath, attached with a faded paperclip, was a notarized clause from Dad's will, one that had been conveniently overlooked. It granted full ownership to the child who restored the Carter legacy after loss. Jason's voice cracked. You rebuilt it, Claire. Not me. It's yours. It always was. The words hit like thunder. All the years of fighting, burning, rebuilding, all for something that had been destined for me from the start. Dad didn't want me to inherit. He wanted me to earn. I stared at Jason. The same brother who'd taken everything, now sitting across from me, broken by his own ambition. And yet there was no satisfaction in watching him fall. Only silence. You found this why? Finally asked. He swallowed hard. Because I couldn't sleep until you knew. I don't want it anymore. For a moment I didn't recognize him. Stripped of pride, stripped of armor. Just a man who'd finally seen what power costs. I folded the letter carefully, Dad was right, I said quietly. It's not about who inherits. It's about who rebuilds. He nodded, eyes glassy. So what happens now? I stood. Now. I rebuild again. But this time for the right reasons. As I walked out, I felt the weight of years lift from my chest. And the strange, hollow ache that comes when revenge starts to lose its flavor. Because sometimes the sweetest victory isn't taking back what's yours. It's realizing you never needed their validation to begin with.